This is Toni Preckwinkle. She is a Fourth Ward alderman running for Cook County Board President. Following this debate with Roger Keats, she gets cornered into responding to questions about an event in 2004. Here's the facts. Property owners were evicted from their co-op building on 402129 Ellis Avenue, valued at $1.5 million, and didn't get a dime. This was a co-op unit fully paid for in 1969 for a total sum of $165,000. The residents always paid their property taxes and utilities until Toni Preckwinkle came on the scene. All the documents, court filings, memos, and papers have been well documented by Sandra in her book, Property Theft, Chicago Political Corruption Style. Ms. Chambers has collected over 379 documents supporting her allegations of corruption and political theft. So I will counter Toni Preckwinkle's assertions one by one.
I just wanted to pass that on.
10 years ago. 10 years ago. He hasn't contributed any money for me to 10 years.
The question here is in regards to Toni Preckwinkle's association with Tony Resco. While Tony Resco is now behind bars, it was over 10 years ago that Toni Preckwinkle first began making moves to take this property. So the fact that Resco hasn't contributed any money to her in 10 years is inconsequential to the question at hand.
Just want to give you an opportunity to dispute what I read in the book by Ms. Chambers recently.
Notice how Preckwinkle attempts to play ignorant about Ms. Chambers and her book. She is well aware of both.
And the residents who were in the property couldn't maintain it.
On the contrary, they had no problems maintaining the property for the last 40 years. The original building code violations amounted to a paltry $287.50. It wasn't until the real owners were usurped by a court-appointed receiver to fix up the building that they were not allowed to maintain it. All monies flowed through the receiver, who never put a dime into the property. The money from the real owners has never been found.
And the building department went in and, inspected the building and decided it wasn't habitable.
This is false. They were evicted because the gas had been turned off. The receiver was not paying the gas bill while the tenants were being forced to pay the receiver for the gas bill. Prior to the receiver taking charge of the facility, the gas had always been paid.
So they told people that they were going to have to leave the building. So I went with the court personnel.
Unfortunately, it was in the newspaper, escorting them out of the building.
Yeah, I went with the court personnel because they were all senior citizens in my ward. I wanted to be sure that they had family that they could go to. I mean, some people were sick. We had to take them in an ambulance to the hospital. I mean, it was terrible.
Why bring them in on petty violations and then give said property to someone else who never paid a dime for it? This is exactly what they did.
Ms. Villa, they claim that when it went into receivership, that you put someone in charge. I don't know what they call it.
Receivership is not something an alderman can do.
Yet, the judge who received campaign contributions from Preckwinkle awarded Holston Management, an ally and contributor to Toni Preckwinkle, as the receiver. Remember, the receiver took the money from the residents on Ellis but never paid the bills.
So the building was in receivership, that's quite true, and there was a receiver. I can't tell you who the receiver was.
On the contrary, as mentioned previously, the judge awarded Holston Management, an ally and contributor to Toni Preckwinkle, as the receiver. She knows full well who the receiver was.
But the receiver is supervised by the court, not the owner.
That money's never been accounted for, that the receivers collected from the people who own that building.
Yeah,
Wow. Preckwinkle just admitted that the money collected from the residents was never accounted for. Let's listen to that again.
Yeah, but that's not something I'm responsible for.
So was Holston Management criminal in their conduct, or was the court criminal in their supervision? Either way, since Toni Preckwinkle knew the money from the residents was never accounted for, why did she earlier say that the residents could not maintain the building?
That's not something I'm responsible for.
Nor has the mortgage of $350,000 been accounted for either.
Well, that's the mortgage of the Community Loan Fund, the Chicago Community Loan Fund, which is a not-for-profit organization which lends money to co-ops.
Notice Preckwinkle acknowledges the $350,000 mortgage taken out by folks who did not have any ownership in the property. But Preckwinkle fails to answer the question and explain where that $350,000 went.
So we had a not-for-profit organization that put money in to try to keep the building open, and the City Department of Housing, and neither was able to do it because there were such extensive repairs that were needed to make it happen.
Not true. Remember, the initial building code violations amounted to a grand total of $287.50. There were no extensive repairs required, certainly nothing that couldn't have been covered by the monies available.
One of the concerns that is raised is Toni Preckwinkle, you are one of his top, he's been one of your top 10 contributors for a while, and he owns...
Not for a while. He hasn't contributed a dime to me for a decade.
While this may be true, she worked closely with Preckwinkle through the 90s, and he was one of her top 10 contributors. This all started in the 90s.
Toni Preckwinkle did affordable housing in my ward in the 90s. At the end of the 90s, he walked away from his properties in my ward.
On the contrary, Toni Preckwinkle himself purchased 2 properties on both sides of 402129 Ellis Avenue in 1998, the same year Preckwinkle began going after the co-op building.
There's still a dispute.
The people that got evicted were the owners of that property, and the mortgage had been paid in full. They paid $160,000 for it back in the 60s, I believe, and it was assessed at a value of $1.5 million.
Well, that's ridiculous. You should. Have you been to look at the property?
The property was valued at $1.5 million in 2002.
You should go look at it. You should go look at the. You should. You should go look at the property. Since you haven't looked at it, you can't talk about it honestly.
On the contrary, Sandra Chambers has all the records on the property value. Since the eviction, the co-op building has been looted, vandalized, and trashed. In fact, the city continued to allow water to run openly in the basement for 2 years after the eviction. I believe it is Preckwinkle who cannot talk about this property honestly.
It's a courtyard building that is a disaster. We put city money in it to try to fix the porches. We put city money in it to try to fix the boilers.
What's interesting here is the porches and the boiler were replaced in 2002, before they acquired the $350,000 mortgage to supposedly fix the property.
They got a $350,000 loan from the Chicago Community Loan Fund, and all of that was not enough to fix the building up and make it habitable.
Again, she brings up the $350,000, yet the money is still unaccounted for. And when asked about it earlier, Preckwinkle never addresses the question.
And the court decided, did you hear me? I said that we used the money to fix the porches and to put in boilers.
Again, the porches and boiler were fixed a year before the $350,000 mortgage was even obtained. No one seems to know where the money went.
And it was still not habitable, according to the courts, not me.
On the contrary, it was Preckwinkle that led the charge in court that the building was beyond repair and it was uninhabitable.
Now, who set up this board?
The questioner is asking about the fraudulent board which the court awarded control of the building. According to Chambers' book, Property Theft, Preckwinkle played a major role in helping form a corporation in 2003 to wrest control of the building from its elderly owners. While conducting the meetings at her own office, Preckwinkle helped choose a president and select board members for this corporation. Many were political supporters. No one on this board had any shares, investment, or paid a dime for the property on Ellis.
Wasn't it you? Was it not you who set up the board for this particular property? And what right did you have to do that?
No, that's not true. That's not true.
Well, according to the many records in Chambers' book, Property Theft, which includes many letters to the fraudulent board, Preckwinkle was holding meetings in her own ward office. This is true.
What is the truth? Could you tell us the truth then?
Sure. I just told you. The court decided
But there
that this
was a
property...
board.
Notice Preckwinkle never answers the question about the fraudulent board and tries to blame it on the court.
Was there
The
or was
court
there not a
decided that this
board?
property needed to be in receivership, and the court appointed a receiver, and the court decided eventually that the building was not habitable, and the court determined that the people needed to be rehoused.
Here she completely tries to remove herself from all responsibility in the case. Never mind that she set up this fraudulent board and took control of a building she didn't own. Never mind she persuaded the residents to enter in a program that would help them keep the property, which really caused them to lose the property. Never mind that the court awarded Holston Management as receiver, an ally and contributor to Preckwinkle. Never mind Preckwinkle's alliance with Toni Preckwinkle. Never mind that Preckwinkle was a contributor to a couple of the judges who handled this case. Oh no, it's all the courts.
And
Okay.
what's your relationship with
Excuse me.
What's your relationship with Tony Resco?
No, Holston
How
had
about
nothing to do with this
1996?
property.
We have dozens of records that illustrate Holston Management had a lot to do with this property and was in fact the receiver. This is just an outright lie.
Holston Management.
No, Holston, no, they had nothing to do with this property. They managed the southern.
Did you not
building
serve
at
on the
47.
board in 1996 with Barack Obama and the Democratic Socialist Caucus? Were you not
No.
a speaker on that? You were not?
No.
Get this book by Sandra Chambers, Property Theft, Chicago Political Corruption Style, sold on Amazon, and read it for yourself. There's so much more to this story. For me, it's the most egregious abuse of power and unrestrained greed I've ever seen. My question is, how many others have had their property stolen from them without any compensation? Is this just the tip of the iceberg? Also, was it Toni Preckwinkle who initiated the building inspector's many visits? Was Toni Preckwinkle and Toni Resco cohorts in a plan to gentrify the entire area? Did her contributions to a judge who presided over some of the hearings play a factor, and why didn't the judge recuse himself from the case? What I found so amazing is the very program Toni Preckwinkle initiated to save these folks from losing their homes is the very program that got them evicted. But the most important question to ask this election season is Toni Preckwinkle someone you really want to put in charge of all of Cook County?